In times when Mr. Harvey was too ill to record his broadcasts, he turned the task over to the creator and sole writer of the rest of the story, his son. Here's Paul Harvey Jr.
Now, the rest of the story. If Tom were alive today, you'd recognize him because you've seen his face in your grocery store. He was born in a tenement house in Glasgow, Scotland. His father was a local shop owner. In 1865, age 15, Tom came to America. Back in Scotland, he'd worked at a number of shops, including his father's, but it was not until working in America that Tom understood the potential of merchandising. In 5 years, he'd absorbed all he could of American merchandising strategy. Then he returned to Glasgow, taking what he'd learned with him. On his 21st birthday, Tom opened a shop of his own, a small grocery on Stobcross Street. That was his first step on the road to fame and wealth and to your grocery store shelf. And not far down that road, Tom met something that would make his name a household word in Scotland, the world's largest cheese. Generally, business-wise, Tom did everything right. He advertised in the Glasgow Citizen. He spruced up his store. From a pole above the door, he hung a large wooden ham. In the window, he placed humorous ads drawn by one of Scotland's leading cartoonists. By night, gas jets lit the shop's interior. Tom was playing the American game, anything to attract attention. And his business kept picking up. Soon Tom opened a second store, and before he knew it, a decade had passed. His publicity stunts had paid off handsomely, and now folks all over Glasgow were wondering, what would Tom do next? Well, the time was right for Tom's wildest plan ever, an idea he'd been thinking about for some time, the display of the world's largest cheese. The newspaper ads said it would be imported from America. Though the exact dimensions and weight of the cheese have been forgotten, the ads tell us that it took 6 days and the labor of 200 dairymaids and the milk of 800 cows to produce it. Understandably, Glasgow was in awe. When the steamer bearing the mammoth cheese sailed in, curious crowds were waiting on the dock and in the streets. As it was transported to Tom's store, onlookers cheered. That was early December 1881, and within a few days Tom had implanted gold coins in his cheese mountain, sovereigns and half-sovereigns. Of course, he was imitating the traditional sixpence in the Christmas pudding. And on Christmas Eve, when the cheese was sliced and put up for sale, a special squad of police was required to control the mob at Tom's grocery shop door. Monster cheeses became a Christmas tradition at Tom's grocery, although most of us have never heard of them. In fact, we never have heard of Tom, were it not for a certain something else he sold long after he'd become a chain store tycoon and a self-made millionaire. You see, Tom was the first merchant to bag and tag tea, because the young Scot whose first lessons in merchandising he learned from us, the young man who brought the American flair for publicity to Glasgow, the rising grocery store owner who made a name for himself by implanting gold coins in a monstrous mountain of cheese. He's remembered today for a comparatively insignificant something labeled tea bags. Sir Thomas Johnstone Lipton. Only now you know the rest of the story.
And now the rest of the story. Growing up in the South, iced tea was our drink of choice. It seems strange now that we didn't drink water. I guess it hadn't become fashionable yet. We pretty much drank tea all day long, and the brand was always Lipton. Thomas Lipton opened his first shop in 1871. Shortly thereafter, Thomas began traveling the world in search of new and unique items to offer in his shop. In the spring of 1876, Lipton opened a new market in Glasgow, Scotland. The Lothian Courier reported that on opening day, a dense line of customers waiting to get into Lipton's market stretched a short distance down the street. The reporters waited patiently in line to get in to take a look for themselves. They reported, "On glancing round the premises, we are pleased with the excellent condition in which everything is kept, fresh and inviting. The walls hung round with rich-looking hams by the hundred, bacon, butter, and cheese piled up by the ton, eggs in the thousands. 2 large front windows exhibit samples of the various qualities of goods with the prices ticketed thereon." Now, at the time, many stores did not have prices listed on each item like we expect today. Customers had to ask the price of each item. The clerk, or clark as they were called in England, sized up the customer. If a customer was dressed in shabby clothing, had dirty hands or face, and appeared to be poor, the price of goods could be less expensive. But they still made a hefty profit. If the customer was dressed nice, had clean hands and face, the price of goods would be inflated. But Lipton sold his goods at the same price for all. The reporters noted that the counter was shaped like a horseshoe and was about 100 feet in length. 100 feet. In our modern society, we're used to stores where we go up and down aisles and retrieve items from the shelves ourselves. But at the time, customers went to the counter and told the sales clerk what they wanted, and the clerk brought the items to the counter. Lipton's market had shopmen and cash boys. 13 shopmen, whom the reporters described as being all smart, tidy fellows with shirt sleeves rolled up, retrieved the items for the customers, and several cash boys took the money and made change. Cash only, no credit. On the day of their visit, reporters said there were about 200 customers inside Lipton's market. That was all they would allow in at one time. 2 robust policemen kept order in the market and made sure customers did not loiter after the purchase was completed. Now, at first, this sounds kind of rough, but remember, there was a long line of people waiting to get in to buy stuff. On the opening day, Lipton's market had an estimated 60,000 customers and sold 50 cases of butter in rolls, 1.5 tons of lump butter, 1 ton of bacon, 1.5 tons of hams, half ton of cheese, and 16,000 eggs. Sales had doubled from 40 million pounds in the late 1870s to 80 million pounds by the mid-1880s. By the 1880s, Thomas owned more than 200 shops. Remember that Paul Harvey Jr. said Lipton displayed the world's largest cheese, but the exact dimensions and weight of the cheese had been forgotten? Take a look at this newspaper article from the Dundee, Scotland Courier and Argus from December 13, 1882. According to the article, Lipton bought 3 of the world's largest cheeses. They arrived on board a steamship called the Bolivia, but there was a problem. They didn't have a crane large enough to unload the heavy cheeses. The heaviest weighed 2,400 pounds. The other 2 weighed 2,100 pounds apiece. They measured 5 feet in diameter, were 2 feet 2 inches deep, and had a circumference of 16 feet. It took New York farmers 6 days to milk the 800 cows to get enough milk to make the cheese. Once unloaded, Lipton displayed the cheeses in his markets in Glasgow, Edinburgh, and Leeds. On Christmas Eve, the mammoth cheeses were cut up and sold to the delighted customers. Until 1890, Thomas sold tea from other suppliers. The tea was rare and expensive. Thomas believed that anyone of any class should be able to enjoy tea at its best. To lower costs, Thomas bought many thousands of acres of tea gardens in Ceylon, which is now Sri Lanka. It was from those tea gardens that Thomas packaged and sold the first Lipton tea. Owning the tea gardens allowed Thomas to produce and package his tea at low cost, and he passed those savings on to his customers. In January 1890, Thomas advertised that this was a revolution in the tea trade because there was no middlemen's profits to pay. Lipton tea, he said, was direct from the tea gardens to the teapot, an indisputable fact. He claimed that the competition's tea, which was sold as the finest, were mere rubbish fit only for the dust bin. He explained that grocers and tea dealers put extortionate profits on their tea. They could easily afford to sell sugar at a loss or give away so-called presents and still have exorbitant profits left. In another advertisement, Thomas called his revolution a terrific slaughter of big profits and claimed that Lipton is the only tea dealer in the universe who supplies direct from the tea garden to the teapot. His advertising campaigns worked. Lipton tea was immediately successful. At the time, tea bags had not yet been invented. Thomas's teas were packaged in different size airtight containers. The customer poured a measure of tea directly into the cup, steeped it, then drank it, tea leaves and all. In about 1908, an American merchant named Thomas Sullivan accidentally invented tea bags. You see, Sullivan sent tea samples to customers in small silk bags. The customers assumed they were supposed to steep the tea while it was still inside the silk bag. Thomas Lipton immediately recognized this as an opportunity. He was the first to begin selling tea in tea bags. Lipton tea is still going strong nearly 150 years later. You can buy it in a wide variety of flavors, including black tea, green tea, fruit tea, iced or hot tea. They come in tea bags, powdered mixes, or K-cups. You can also buy tea in ready-to-drink containers at convenience stores. How do you prefer your tea? I'm Brad Dison. Thanks for watching, and now you know the rest of the story.